Welcome back. Time now for Media Watch. I'm joined by James Creedon. Hello, James.
Evening, Tom.
We're going to start with a video that's doing the rounds about the Malian army, and some saying it perhaps exemplifies just why outside help was needed.
That's right. Now, this was from a French show called C'est dans l'air. It's in the air on France 5, which is a state television. Let's take a look at an extract of this show because it shows the Malian army. This is back in December, and they look a little bit underprepared, a lack of ammunition.
Il ne manque pas d'allants, mais de...
Right, now that was from December, but it was put online again a couple of days ago, as the whole intervention in Mali has become centre stage in the news. It's had 133,000 hits on YouTube in the last couple of days. I suppose, it's sort of a tragicomic scene. It shows, I suppose, a really badly and underprepared force, and that would explain to some extent why the French forces were necessary on the ground. Now, the French are pretty much on their own for now, apart from some West African countries that have come in, and it is a source of irritation for some politicians in France. Let's take a look at Pierre Lelouch on this webpage here. Now, he spoke in the National Assembly yesterday, Tom, and he said, why is it always the French who have to do this on their own? He's a UMP deputy, I should add. He said, we keep hearing the usual refrain about Franco-German friendship, but in fact we're beginning to move apart more and more on all of the big questions of foreign policy. Whenever we need Germany, they're not there. The French do not have a vocation to be the mercenaries for Europe. It's the French on our own or the French with the English every time there is a problem and others looking on. So some criticism for the fact that it's just France going to help the Malians.
Now, we're going to move on to Lance Armstrong, who, of course, gave that tell-all to Oprah Winfrey. I don't know if you want us all to feel sorry for him all of a sudden, but certainly in the Twitter sphere, not much sympathy.
Certainly not, Tom. And indeed, lots of buzz around this in the days ahead of it as well. Oprah Winfrey saying it was the biggest interview she'd ever done, even though she's interviewed pretty much everybody. So let's take a look at some of the reactions. Some people saying she was too soft on Armstrong and that somebody like perhaps Piers Morgan would have been more appropriate. Now, Piers Morgan, interestingly, of CNN, was one of the most critical on Twitter. He's saying that he's the worst lying, doping cheat in the history of sports, and not mincing his words. What a snivelling, lying, cheating little wretch Armstrong revealed himself to be tonight. I hope he now just disappears. Somebody was very quick to say, well, pot kettle black, Mr. Morgan, because in terms of the phone hacking scandal, there were some questions he didn't answer either. Now, moving on to this guy, Rick Riley. He is a sports commentator in the US and a sports columnist. Now, he spent about 15 years defending Armstrong absolutely and fully and completely until he got an email about 2 or 3 days ago from Armstrong saying, sorry. And Rick Riley is furious. He said, after years of lying to my face, Lance Armstrong apologizes in an email. He can keep it. And you can see here extracts of that email where he just literally said, sorry about that. And further down, this guy's reaction, 2 words, that's it. For 14 years of defending a man and in the end being made to look like a chump. And so he was commenting during the interview as well, saying this is just 20% confession, 80% justification. I'll finish with one French tweet saying, well, some respect for him. He did win 7 Tour de France. When I've taken drugs, I can barely find my Vélib station. That's the free bikes in Paris.
Well, some consolation for Rick Riley as well. That
yes.
He comes across, I think, rather nicely out of this story. Someone who
does.
stands by his friends, so he can take some comfort in that.
Yes.
Now, we all know, living in Paris, just what the rents are like. They're exorbitant, and you've got a pretty good example of just that.
Right. Well, I feel better about my rent, the bill at the end of the month, having seen this. Take a look at this photo, Tom. That is a 1.5 meter squared apartment somewhere in Paris. Now, one man by the name of Dominique spent 15 years living there, and he was paying €330 a month for that little corner excuse for an apartment. Now, the man who was renting him that space is on front of the courts, and I think I would personally like to see him in a jail cell even smaller than that for the foreseeable future, because it's just scandalous to ask for that much money for what is effectively a broom cupboard.
Well, hopefully the lock was also on the inside, because from that photograph it looks like there were only keys on the outside, so it was locked in. Now, the Republican Party has made a big communications blunder. Of course, the Republicans of the United States, they were looking to improve communications with minorities, but it didn't quite work out as planned.
All right, now this was their one of their annual meetings for House Republicans. Let's take a look at this headline. House Republicans meet at a former slave plantation to practice talking to black people. Now, in fact, this was at in Williamsburg, discussion on how to have successful communication with minorities and women, but it was actually in a former plantation, as Gawker, very left-wing, an anti-Republican website says, the GOP has heard your complaints, blacks and Latinos and women, and they're going to try to suss it out while sitting on top of dead slave bones. So that's one way of putting it.
Yes, that's an interesting
They could perhaps
set of
have planned
there.
a better location for that thinking.
Indeed. Well, thank you very much indeed,
Thanks, Tom.
James Creedon. That was Media Watch. Well, it's time now to get a check of what's getting people clicking, blogging, and sharing online. Our daily date with cyberspace web news starts right now.